There's a moment in every chosen one's life when you stop just surviving and begin to remember. Not memories of this life, but something older. Something buried deep within your soul. A knowing that you are not just human, that you are a walking mystery encoded with something divine, something ancient, something powerful. But the world doesn't tell you that. The world tells you to be small, to obey, to blend in. And so most people never find it. They never awaken the God power inside them because they never find the hidden triggers that unlock it. But if you're here, watching this, it means you're not most people. It means the code is already activating. And what I'm about to tell you will change everything if you're ready. I'm not talking about religion. I'm not talking about belief systems. I'm talking about the raw, untamed, divine force that lives inside your very cells. The God power is not something you pray for. It's something you ignite. It's not given. It's unlocked. And it's hidden behind 7 triggers, 7 sacred upheavals that most people run from. But the chosen ones, we walk straight into them because we know that fire doesn't destroy what's real. It reveals it. The first trigger is the collapse of your identity. This is the moment when everything you thought you were, your job, your status, your relationships, your beliefs begins to fall apart. You try to hold it together, but it slips through your fingers like ash. And in that moment you feel like you're dying. But what's actually dying? The false self, and the mask. The version of you that was built to survive in a broken system. The ego screams, "This is the end." But the soul whispers, "This is the beginning." Because when the false identity collapses, something breathtaking happens. The real you starts to emerge. The you that remembers. The you that was chosen. The you that carries the blueprint of something bigger than you've ever allowed yourself to imagine. The second trigger is sacred rage, not blind anger. Not ego tantrums. I'm talking about the moment when your soul rises up and says, "Enough. Enough of the lies. Enough of the manipulation. Enough of the fear." This rage isn't violent, it's clarifying. It burns through illusion. It cuts cords to old programming. It doesn't destroy, it liberates. And if you've ever felt that fire in your belly, the one that says, "I was made for more," then you've already touched the edge of your God power. Because God doesn't give you rage to hurt others, He gives it to you so you'll finally rise. So you'll stop sleeping. So you'll stop accepting crumbs when you were born to feed nations. But here's the twist. The third trigger is silence. After the identity is stripped and the rage is released, the universe gives you the void. And most people can't handle it. They rush to fill it with distractions, relationships, noise. But the chosen ones, we sit in it. We descend into the stillness like a diver entering deep water. And in that silence, something extraordinary happens. We begin to hear the voice of the divine not as thunder, but as a whisper. Not as instruction, but as presence. In the silence, we meet ourselves for the first time. And we realize we were never alone. We were always being watched, guided, prepared. The silence is the womb, and the God power is gestating. Then comes the fourth trigger, and this one is hard, radical responsibility. This is the moment you stop blaming. You stop pointing fingers, You stop waiting to be rescued. And you say the words that terrify the ego but liberate the soul. Everything that's happened to me was for me. That doesn't mean it was okay. That doesn't mean you deserve the pain. But it means that now you choose to turn it into power. You choose to extract the code, to find the message in the wound, and to become the alchemist of your own story. Because the God power doesn't live in victimhood. It lives in sovereignty. And sovereignty begins the moment you say, "This is my life. I choose what it becomes now." And then the energy shifts. You begin to notice things you never saw before. Patterns, signs, numbers, synchronicities. You start to feel the presence of something divine walking with you. That's the fifth trigger, the mystical opening. Your senses expand. Your dreams become prophetic. You start hearing the inner voice more clearly. You feel like you're waking up inside the dream of life. This is not coincidence. This is activation. Your third eye is beginning to open. Your nervous system is recalibrating. Your frequency is rising. And the God power? It's no longer just a concept. It's a living force moving through your body. But this is the moment where many people sabotage themselves. Because what comes next is not more bliss. It's temptation. That's the sixth trigger, the test of power. When you begin to awaken, the universe will test you. Not with punishment, but with choice. Will you use your power to control or to create? Will you manipulate or will you liberate? Will you serve your ego or your mission? You'll be offered shortcuts. You'll be given opportunities that look good but feel wrong. You'll be tempted to betray your truth for approval. And in that moment, everything is on the line. Because the God power is sacred, it cannot be taken. It can only be trusted. And the universe will not trust you with it until you show that you trust yourself. And finally, the seventh trigger, the return to the world, not as the old self, but as the embodiment. This is where the chosen ones rise not in fantasy, but in function. You don't just talk about awakening. You become a walking signal of it. You don't just post about light. You radiate it. You don't need to prove. You are. Your energy becomes the message. Your life becomes the transmission. And people feel it. They remember who they are just by being near you. That's the real God power. It's not about fireworks. It's not about fame. It's about frequency. It's about becoming so you, so true, so clear, that the illusion cannot survive in your presence. So now I ask you, soul to soul, have you been running from the very triggers that were designed to awaken you? Because if you felt the collapse, the rage, the silence, the call to responsibility, the mystical signs, the tests, the return, then you're not just awakening. You're remembering. You're remembering what God hid inside you before this lifetime began. You're remembering the assignment. You're remembering the source. And in the next part, we're going to go even deeper. We're going to talk about how to live this power daily. How to walk through the world as a living portal. How to protect your frequency. How to anchor this energy into your body, your relationships, your purpose. Because awakening is just the beginning. The real miracle is in the embodiment. Once the God power has been triggered inside you, Everything changes, but not in the way the world told you it would. It's not about glory. It's not about being seen. It's not about walking through life with a golden crown and light beaming from your chest for everyone to admire. It's deeper, quieter, more dangerous, more real. Because the truth is, once you awaken that divine force, the world doesn't throw you a parade. It tests you harder. It stares you down and asks, "Do you really remember? Or are you still pretending?" And most of all, it tempts you to go back to sleep, to shrink, to forget again. But you didn't come this far for that. You didn't walk through fire, through collapse and silence and sacred rage, just to return to the illusion. You came to live as the portal. You came to embody the power. And here is the paradox no one tells you: the more awake you become, the more invisible you may feel. Not because you are less, but because the old version of reality can no longer recognize you. You no longer match the frequencies of performance, of victimhood, of manipulation. You don't play that game anymore. You walk differently. You speak differently. You vibrate differently. And because of that, people will either be magnetized to you or they'll be deeply uncomfortable around you. That's not your fault. That's your field. When you live as a God-powered being, your aura becomes a mirror. And not everyone is ready to see what their reflection reveals. So how do we live this power without becoming bitter? How do we walk through a world still asleep, still hurting, still trapped in shallow cycles, and not let it pull us back into the dream we've already outgrown? The answer is embodiment. Not just knowing you are divine, but living like it. Every day, every breath, every choice. And that starts with presence. Because your power doesn't come from how much you know. It comes from how deeply you are here, in this moment, in this body, in this breath. Most people live in their heads, in their past, in their projections. But the chosen ones who carry God power, we live in the now. We don't run from discomfort, we feel it. We don't avoid the truth, we become it. We don't just talk about energy, we are the energy. And that's why mastering your energy field is no longer optional, it's mission critical. When you awaken the God power, you become a transmitter. You're always sending out a frequency, whether you're aware of it or not. And that frequency is either coded with truth or distortion. So you must become devoted to your own clarity. Clean your field. Protect your thoughts. Purify your intentions, not out of fear, but out of reverence. Your body is not just flesh, it's a temple. Your voice is not just sound, it's a spell. Your presence is not just casual, it's a portal. And when you realize that, your entire life becomes sacred. Every step becomes a prayer. Every word becomes a transmission. But here's the challenge that separates the real ones from the performers. Can you live your power when no one is watching? Can you walk in integrity when it would be easier to betray yourself? Can you hold the frequency when everything around you is asking you to drop it? Because this is where the God power becomes real, not in the ceremonies, not in the downloads, not in the aesthetics, but in the choice, the daily choice. To be truth, even when it costs you. To be light, even when it's not convenient. To be still when the world is screaming. And this is where many fall. They awaken just enough to feel the power, but not enough to become it. They use it to seduce, to manipulate, to build false empires. They talk about God, but they don't walk with God. They say the words, but their lives don't reflect them. That's not embodiment. That's spiritual cosplay. And the world doesn't need more performers. The world needs portals. Living, breathing, grounded, honest, unshakable humans who are so aligned with the divine that their lives become a mirror for others to remember who they are. So how do you stay anchored in that power when the world forgets who you are? When people project onto you, when life tests your clarity, your patience, your heart, you return to the breath, you return to the body, you return to the now. Because the divine doesn't live in the past. It doesn't live in your trauma. It doesn't even live in the future you're trying to manifest. It lives here, in this breath, in this moment, in this heartbeat. And when you live from that place, life begins to organize itself around your frequency. You attract not what you want, but what you are. You don't chase. You magnetize. You don't force. You flow. You don't react. You respond from an unshakable core that no one else can give you, and no one can take away. And here is the real secret the world doesn't want you to know. You don't have to try to be powerful. You already are. The power is not something you earn. It's something you remember. It was given to you before you were born, hidden in your DNA, buried in your bones. And every experience you've had, every betrayal, every heartbreak, every breakdown was not a punishment. It was a trigger, a key, a sacred setup to wake you up. And now you're awake. Now you remember. Now you walk differently. Now you speak differently. Now you carry something. So let me ask you one of the deepest questions you'll ever face. Can you be trusted with the power you've been given? Not just to use it, but to live it. Because the God power is not a performance. It's a presence. And your life, your actual messy, miraculous, human life is the altar. You don't need to escape this world. You need to infuse it with your frequency. You need to walk into the grocery store, into traffic, into family gatherings, into boardrooms, into bedrooms, and bring the power with you. Not by preaching, not by saving, but by simply existing in your truth. Quiet, clear, whole. That's what makes you different. That's why you were chosen. You are not here to fit in. You are here to recalibrate reality by being a new frequency inside of it. You are the living portal. You are the answer to a prayer someone hasn't even whispered yet. You are the code walking on two legs. Now it's time to master the final phase. In the next part, we'll explore how to walk as a creator in a reactive world. How to activate your voice, your vision, your vibration without burning out or becoming diluted. Because you weren't sent here just to survive the awakening. So here we are. The final phase. You've awakened the God power inside you. You've remembered the truth that was buried beneath all the noise of this world. You've walked through the 7 hidden triggers, not just conceptually, but spiritually, energetically, somatically. You've felt the weight of it, the fire of it, the silence of it. You've been stripped down to the raw essence of who you really are. And now, there's only one thing left to do: create. Because once you've remembered who you are, Once the God power has not only awakened but anchored within you, there's no excuse anymore. You are no longer a seeker. You are no longer waiting for signs. You are the sign. You are the code. And the code must now be expressed through your life, your choices, your actions. This world is not something you're in. It's something you're shaping moment by moment, breath by breath, frequency by frequency. But let's be real. The moment you start creating from this place, not from ego, not from agenda, but from divine remembrance, you will begin to feel the full force of resistance from a world that is still addicted to reaction. The collective field is heavy with distraction, comparison, fear, and survival programming. You will feel it. You will be tempted to shrink. You will be pulled to fit back into the old mold. But remember this, you are not here to react, you are here to recalibrate. Every time you hold your frequency instead of matching the chaos, you shift the field. Every time you speak truth instead of seeking approval, you activate others. Every time you choose alignment over comfort, you become the architect of a new timeline. To create reality as a God-powered being, you must live with precision, not perfection, precision. This means becoming radically conscious of what you allow into your field, the words you speak, the thoughts you entertain, the people you surround yourself with, the content you consume, the environments you tolerate. You are no longer just a human with preferences. You are a portal with responsibility. Your energy shapes the realm around you. So if you find yourself in spaces that drain you, ask, why am I choosing to stay here? If you're sharing your vision with people who mock it, ask, why do I still seek validation from the blind? If you're silencing your truth to be accepted, ask, what part of me still fears my own light? This is what it means to become a conscious creator. You stop outsourcing your power. You stop leaking your energy. You stop seeking answers outside of yourself, because now you embody the answer. Now, your intuition is not just a whisper, it's a command. And when God power is active inside you, your creations are not just personal, they are planetary. Your art becomes medicine. Your voice becomes frequency. Your presence becomes prophecy. You're no longer creating for likes or applause. You're creating because the divine is moving through you, and you must let it move. If you don't, you suffer. Because God power is not meant to be contained. It's meant to be expressed. But here's the nuance most spiritual teachings skip. Expression without embodiment is distortion. You can't just talk about God consciousness, you have to live it. You have to embody it in your posture, your relationships, your finances, your routines. You have to let your divinity touch the most human parts of you. That's the real mastery. Not escaping the body, but infusing it with source. Not denying the world, but recreating it through your choices. Can you bring your highest self into the smallest moments? Can you speak with love even when you're angry? Can you hold boundaries without closing your heart? Can you create beauty even when the world feels broken? Because that's what this mission is really about. Not building something flashy, not becoming some enlightened figure on a pedestal, but becoming so integrated, so clear, so true, that everything you create becomes a reflection of God moving through form. That's what it means to be chosen. That's what it means to be the code. You don't just change the external world, you change the blueprint of how reality operates. You introduce new frequencies. You collapse timelines that no longer serve. You open doors for others just by existing in your truth. You are the prayer your ancestors wept for. You are the voice your future self is calling back into alignment. So here's the final question I leave you with. What would happen if you stopped dimming your frequency to match the world, and instead amplified it until the world had no choice but to rise? Because that's the frequency that changes everything. That's the frequency that rewrites history. That's the frequency that births the new earth. It doesn't come from leaders on stages. It doesn't come from institutions. It comes from you. Quietly, powerfully, relentlessly. Choosing truth over convenience. Choosing vision over fear. Choosing creation over reaction. Every single day, you are the code. You are the portal. You are the answer. Now go live like it. We speak like it. Create like it. And let the sleepwalkers feel your presence like a thunderclap in their bones. This is not the end of your journey. This is the beginning of your God era. Welcome to the real game. Now go shake the world awake.